So I want to show you how I finally finished my apples. Last time I showed them to you, this table was still too light and I didn't put the shadows here. So see how the shadows, the edge of the shadow, it's got to be very soft, especially when it's a shadow that's very, very faint. Same thing here. Shadow is sharper, closer to the object, and then it goes to a softer shadow. And the shadow in the background is very soft because it's far away from the object. And to paint this painting, I only used a very light green and magenta and a little bit of red orange. So these are the three colors that I used, and it makes it very harmonious. And I use different techniques to do that. So tonight we are going to paint the lighthouse. This is the example that I will be looking at to paint the lighthouse tonight. And in this painting, and we'll do the same tonight, we will only need blue and red. So the ultramarine blue and the alizarin crimson are the two colors that I will be using tonight. If you have this blue and this red, I suggest that you use these colors as well. If you don't have the alizarin crimson and the ultramarine blue for the red and the blue, then use the ones that you do have. Try to limit yourself to one blue and one red. This way, you don't get confused as to how did I make this color? Well, you only have two choices, the blue or the red, or a combination of both. Now, the colors that we will be using tonight will be using the blue, the indigo, the purple, and the magenta. So you can't really see very well on here because these are like a little too dark. But we will use 4 contiguous color on a color wheel using a very analogous palette, meaning all the colors are all using one primary color. So the blue is in all of them. It's in the blue, it's in the indigo, it's in the purple, and it's also in the magenta. So all these colors are made using the blue, which is the ultramarine blue, and the alizarin crimson. These are 2 primary colors. So to paint our lighthouse, we will use blue. We will use indigo. Indigo is a lot of blue with a teeny bit of red. Purple is made by combining the blue and the red equally, but with this being said, depending on how much pigment you have in your tube of blue and your tube of red, it might need more blue or more red to make a nice purple. And magenta is a lot of red and a little blue. So that's how these colors are made. And so to paint our lighthouse, we will be using the blue. So for the blue sky, for example, it's pretty obvious, it's blue. And the white is the white of the paper. Now here we have some nice purples in the rocks. And we have a little bit of magenta for some highlights in the rocks, as you can see. And in some places, like over here, we have an indigo, which is a blue with just a little red in it over here. And maybe up here, where we have a shadow under the overhang. So I will walk you through every step. So to start, you should have, it's really hard to see, but if I go close, you should have your whole drawing on your watercolor paper. See, I didn't put any detail on the, on the house, because when I paint, I will just paint a little rectangle for the door and 2 little squares for the windows, and I'll add a chimney. But I did do my, I put my little hat for the roof and the whole column. And then I indicated with the rocks. See, the rock goes here like this, and the other rock is like this. So that's all I put for lines. Really hard to see because I tried not to make them too dark, because once the painting is done, you can't really see the tracing. See, you can't really see, even if I go close. If I go very close, see, you can see here the tracing that I had done. But if I go far away, you can't really see it. And that's what we're trying to do. All right, so now you should be able to see the example to the right and my paper where I have my tracing to the left. If you don't see this, please unmute yourself and let me know. But I think you can see it. And now's the time to prepare our colors. So what we need to prepare is we need to prepare 4 colors. Again, we're going to prepare a blue, the ultramarine blue, and we also need to prepare an indigo, a purple, and a magenta. So the most that we will be using is the blue and the purple, and we will use a little magenta and a little indigo. Now these colors, if I were to do a sampling of these colors on my little sampling, oops, it's pretty full. Let me try find another little one that's not full over here. I think I have one. So these are just little cutouts of scrap of watercolor paper that I like to have so that I can test my colors before I actually put them onto my canvas. So the blue is blue. So this is my nice ultramarine blue. If it's very pigmenty, it looks like this, but I could also make it very light by adding water. You see, now it becomes light. So this is just ultramarine blue. Then if I use ultramarine blue with a little red in it, so if I put just a little bit of red in my ultramarine blue, I will get a nice indigo. And so just to show you the difference between the two, I don't know if you can even see the difference on the camera. Let me put a little bit more water just to show you. So I don't know that you can actually see the difference between the two. But anyway, this is the indigo. So I've put just a teeny little bit of red in my blue. Now, if I put a lot of red in the blue, or kind of like half and half red, half blue, then I will get something that is like purple. So purple will be nice.
Claire, are there colors that we should be making more of? Like, what are the main colors?
Yes. So the 2 main colors that we will be using is blue and purple. And we will use a little bit of magenta and a little bit of indigo. So now this is my purple. And so see, as I go towards this, then I add more red. And now I'm going to make the magenta. Magenta is a lot of red and just a teeny bit of the blue. And magenta gives me something like this. So I think maybe my purple could be a little bit more. Has a little bit more red in it. So now you can see a little bit the colors that we're going to use. So this is ultramarine blue. This is indigo. So it's a blue that has just a little bit of red in it. Then we have the purple here. And then this is the magenta. So the purple is a mix of the blue and the red. And almost equal. And this one here, it's a Listerine crimson with just a little bit of blue in it. We're not going to use the red, but just to show you the difference between the magenta and the red, just going to put a little bit of it here. See, the red is like this. So the red is a little, this is the red, this is the magenta. So we will use these 4 colors. A lot of blue, a lot of purple, and we'll use a little bit of indigo and a little bit of magenta. So I'm going to stop the recording, give you a chance to prepare your colors. Then when we're done, we'll paint. Right. Now that we have prepared our colors, so we prepared blue, indigo, purple, and magenta, we are ready to paint. And we are going to start painting. The first step that we are going to do is we're going to paint the sky. So the sky is all up here, all the way around the lighthouse. And because when I paint, my paper is like this, there's a gravity that brings all the water down. So in my case, it's better if I turn it upside down. So I'm going to paint it upside down. I'm going to water, all the way around, and then I'm going to paint this section. Now, if your paper is like on an incline like this, and you also have the effect of gravity, you can also turn it upside down and water all of this and then paint it. And even if you work flat, it might be easier to reach all of these little corners here and wet only these corners without wetting the house or the lighthouse to work upside down. So now I've turned it upside down to paint this area. This is a large area, so I recommend using a large brush. I'm going to use this big one here that I actually used this afternoon, still wet. If you have a large round brush like this one, for example, that would work too. If you have a mop, the mop will be very difficult to use just because you have to go very close here around all the objects. So this would be very difficult, probably impossible to do this, to go very fine. So this would not be the right brush to use. If you have like a filbert like this one, that when you wet it, it goes into a very point, then this could also work very well. If you only have a small little brush like this, you can use that, but it will probably not get the result that that we are hoping, in the sense that it will take too long to paint the whole thing, so it'll have time to dry. But nevertheless, maybe you have one like this that might work. I'm going to use this one. Now I'm dipping into a clean bucket of water, and I'm wetting on this whole area here. So around the rock like this, and I'm making sure that I'm not putting water onto my lighthouse, but I am putting water through the balcony and not on the hat. I mean the roof. So see, I went here and I did wet this portion here. Then the roof is like so. So I'm following the contour of the roof, contour of the little ball around on top of the roof. And now that this whole section has been wet, then I move on to the other section, the other side. Here you have to work fast. So if you have started, I suggest you continue and just move along. But if you have not started and want to wait until I'm done demonstrating to wet your paper and paint this section, you can do that too, because you want to do it in one go without interruption in between. So now I'm here, and see, I went through. Now I'm going to turn it this way because it's just easier to go all the way to the lighthouse, and like this. Yeah, I want to make sure it's wet enough. And following the roof line around the little ball. So now I've wet the whole thing. I'm putting it upside down again. And I wet my brush first, then I dip it into the blue. It's a blue that's very wet. So I don't want to have too much of the blue color. Just want to do a color that is light blue. And because I've wet the paper before I start, it's just running down. There we go. Now, it's better if you have a little bit more of a blue at the top. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue up here. Like so. But I'm not going to go all the way up. And then, oops, that's what I wanted to do. A little bit more water. And I'm going to paint this side. Same thing. And if you have a table and you can put your elbow down, makes it easier to do a straight line, you can do that. I'm working on the easel, so I kind of have to make do with that. It's just a little harder, but it's not undoable. And I know that here at the bottom, I want a little bit more blue. So I want to make sure that I follow this through the balcony, because we'll just paint the balcony back on top. And once it dries, we will be able to see our drawing under. Also turn it. All right. And if I want to have any kind of little clouds like you see on this one here, then what you can do, I'm just going to turn it upside down for this, is dip a smaller brush into water, dry it on paper towel, like so. And while this is still wet, I'm just going to remove some of the paint, and this will create nice soft edges for my cloud. So here's a nice little cloud, and then I can create another one like maybe over here. Using a damp brush is a good idea. It just removes a little bit of the paint, and it leaves the edge soft. So now you can see here how in some areas there's more color, less colors, more color, which is fine, because usually at the top here, at the top of the sky is where the sky is the bluest. So I will give you a little bit of time to complete this step, and then once you are done, we'll move on to the next step. So now that my sky is dry, now I can come down here and paint the rocks or paint the lighthouse. But I want to bring your attention to this here. See, I went over. So this portion here is a portion that if I want to erase it or try to make it disappear, I could try to lift it. Now, I don't need to lift it in this example because the dark portion or the shadow portion is on the left-hand side, so I will paint over this. But I want to take this opportunity to show you how to deal with something like this if you actually would prefer that it were lighter. So what I do is I take a small brush and I wet it, then I dry it on the paper towel so it's still damp, and I will go here very close like this, and I will try to wet this section that I would like to try and remove. Now it's very important I don't go outside the section that I want to remove. Once this is done, I take a paper towel and I press, and see now it's pretty much gone right here. It was right here, it's pretty much gone. So if it's not necessary, don't do it. But I wanted to show you how to do it just in case at any time you were to need it in the future. All right, now, so we could paint the rocks, but I think we're going to paint the lighthouse. Now, my sky is pretty much dry. Now, don't touch yours, because if you do, it's gonna mark, but mine's pretty much dry. So I'm gonna demonstrate how to paint the lighthouse on this side. Now, you need to wait until your sky is dry before you do this. So I suggest that you watch the demonstration. This will give the time to your painting to dry, to your sky to dry. Then once I'm done the demonstration, then you can do this part on yours. So this part of the lighthouse will be painted with, we'll use a little bit of magenta, a little bit of purple, and a little bit of indigo. And also this section here of the lighthouse, this part is left white. There's no color on this section. And same thing here on the roof. There's no color on this section. It's the white of the paper because the light is coming from this direction. So, and it's hitting the lighthouse on this side. So that's why the lighthouse remains white on this side as well as the roof. So how do we do this? So when I wet the lighthouse, I will wet the left side all the way to about 3/4 of the lighthouse. I will not wet this side. Same thing with the roof. Now, before I wet my lighthouse, I have to make sure that I have some magenta, some purple, as well as some indigo ready to go. Once these colors are ready, then I'm going to wet my lighthouse using, so I think I'm going to use a smaller brush for this. I'm going to use my filbert. I think, yeah. This size would be good too. I'm going to use this brush filbert. And I dip into clean water, not too much. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to paint, I'm going to wet this, all of this, like so. Try to make sure that you wet all the way to the sky. And in my case, I have to make sure that this little drip doesn't drip too low. And so this section here is still dry. So dipping into my magenta, just a little bit of it. I'm going to do my first, like so. Right up against the sky. No line in between. Then I dip into my indigo. No, sorry, not my indigo, my purple. Just a little bit, not too much. And then I go next to it, my purple. And then I go next to it with my indigo. I think that, you know what? The red is too red. This is better. Yep. And remember, it will dry lighter than you paint it. That's what, now I am completely cleaning my brush. I'm actually going to use another brush. Dry the brush a little bit, dip it in just water, and then I'm gonna keep it just damp. And I'm just gonna go here with this damp brush, and I go along the side, just like that. And I also want to use my indigo because there is an overhang, so therefore there is darkness here. So this indigo will be added right here at the top, just like that. Now I'm drying my brush. Just want it to float there. And so now I have my overhang that casts a shadow, and then I have the roundness of the lighthouse like this. And there's just one more thing that should be done with the indigo. So I dipped into the indigo again, and I'm just going under where I have my balcony. It's right here like this. Cast a little shadow under it, like so. And I've dried my brush now. Rinse my brush, dried it, just to make it a bit of a softer edge here, like so. So now it's your turn. Eventually we will draw the balcony, but right now we're just putting the shadow under. To paint the rocks, I'm going to use my clean water and wet this whole section here. I suggest that you do this with me. So wet this whole section here, like so. And all of this, make sure that you go all the way to our sky and that you leave an area at the bottom for the crashing waves. So now I've wet all of this, which is the rocks, and I dip my brush into the purple, full purple. So I put a lot of paint into onto my brush. See, I put it completely in the well like this. And now I'm going to paint these nice rocks. Look at how beautiful this gives me. It gives me nice colors. And because the rocks are not just one color, Now I'm going to dip my brush into my magenta without rinsing it first or cleaning it. And I'm going to add some magenta in some places, like maybe over here, and maybe over here, and maybe over here. Make sure there's no white spots between your lighthouse and your rocks. I have to go like this a little bit because now I'm getting too much gravity. Now I'm gonna dip again into my purple and add even more pigment to my rocks. So this is an area that you want to do, and make sure that you put a lot of pigment. And rocks, as well as water, the edge of it is usually not super equal or straight. So it's okay. Now I've dipped into my magenta again to switch a little bit, and I'm just covering my rocks. I hope you can see, but I'm trying not to have any drip beyond my paper and on the area which will be the crashing waves. So I'm going to use my paper towel, capture the extra. And I'm going to put it flat so that it dries a little bit, because it's pretty wet right now. If I can incline it every which way. Right. So one can say these are fairly abstract rocks. They're not completely defined. If you wanted to find the rocks per se, could not. But it's a fun thing to do. So I'm going to stop the recording now. So to paint the roof of the house and the little chimney, we're going to use the same colors that we used in the rocks. So a nice deep purple is the color that I suggest that we use. And to paint the roof of the house, because it's so small, we don't necessarily need to wet it first, but we need to paint it quickly. So I'm going to use this brush, this size. It's almost the right width for this. And I'm going to use my nice deep purple, because I made some more of this purple because I was out. And here, I make sure that I don't go over the lighthouse, because this part of the lighthouse will remain white. And I'm just going to paint my roof like this, bottom. The roof is straight. And here, part. Let's go like this. All right, and the little chimney, just a little something like this. Now my roof is done. Now in the same fashion, I'm going to paint the roof of the lighthouse. So you need using a nice purple without wetting my roof. I'm going to use that nice purple and go here. This is the shadowy side. See, I have a pretty thick purple. I'm just going to paint it like this. Once I'm about 1/3, then I'm going to clean my brush and dry it on the water, on the towel, paper towel. And then I'm going to come back and use the paint that's on here to extend it. So it will automatically go a little lighter. I can do the little ball here at the same time. Just that side. Now I'm here. I'm gonna clean my brush again. Dry it on the paper towel. It's damp. And I'm gonna go here to extend the color some more. Like so. Not all the way to the edge. I'm gonna leave a section white. Except here at the bottom. There. So now we have a roof that is, oops, this looks a little funny. We have a roof that looks a little round, you know, round like this. And that's what we want. Now, I have this nice deep purple and I'm ready to do this balcony with it. So now we just have a few more things that we need to do to finish this lighthouse. And one of these things is to paint this little house here, the balcony, the under the roof, and also the water that appears below the rocks. So using a small brush, actually, I'm going to use this brush here, and I'm going to paint this house. So now I have to be careful because I don't want it to run on my rocks. So I'm going to go like this, sideways. I'm going to wet the house a little bit, not too much, just a little bit here, like this. And using some blue, watery blue, I'm going to paint this like just a very faint color, like this, all the way to the rocks. Very faint color. I even turn it the other way. All the way to the sky on the side. And I also want to indicate this shadow casted by the overhang. So to indicate the shadow, I'm going to use a little bit of my indigo, a little watery indigo, and put it there. I'll take it in my hand just so that I can paint it this way. I just want to put a little bit of it here, not too much. And it's gonna run down a little bit, and that's what I want. Okay. So now I've done this. I'm gonna let this dry. While this is drying, I'm going to paint under the little hat, which is the roof, using a small brush, small pointy brush like this, and using very thick purple color. So it has to be a lot of pigment. I'm going to paint under here, which is in a complete shadow. You can leave a little line if you want. This is under. And it's also on this side. right. Oops, a little spot. Okay, so now I have this. Just gonna make sure that this is right. All right. So now I have these two little spots here have been painted. Now I'm going to paint my balcony with, again, what I want to use is a very thick purple. And these bars are completely straight, whereas this one is like an oval. And just so that I can do it more easily, I'm gonna hold it in my hand like this. Comes around. And so now taking a little bit more paint, I'm going to do the railing on the top. One swoop, voila. Now, still using a lot of thick paint. This is under. So I'm going to do this portion. Same here. Like so. Continuing with the very dark purple. There's a little bit of a width to this. So I'm going to put it sideways just so it's easier to paint and give it a little bit of a width. That's like a little platform. People can stand there and look all the way around. Voila. So this is done. And still using the dark purple, very thick. I'm going to put some bars. Now the bars on the front will be closer together, further apart. So like so. And then as they go to the side, then because it curves, they're a little closer together. Oops, this one's not straight. And this goes back around like so. All right, so now we have the little balcony that goes all the way around. And it's time to add the door. To add the door, I like to use a brush like this, or perhaps, where's my other one? Ah, this one. I'm going to use this one here, like this. And I'm going to paint it with a nice indigo color. You could use the color that you prefer. You could actually use purple or indigo. I'm just going to use indigo. And I'm going to go, sorry. I'm going to hold it just because it's just, I want to do it straight. So a dark color basically is what you want to do. All the way to the rocks. So now we have the door. I'm using a similar color. I'm going to do 2 windows. 1, 2, voila. So now I have my windows. And you can also put little windows, you know, on the lighthouse, like so. Some lighthouse, they have little slits like this that are like little windows inside. And so we have the windows here, the roof is put. We have the roundness of the lighthouse. Oh, the water at the bottom. To do the water at the bottom, you can use a medium-sized brush. You want to use a very watery blue. So I'm wetting this and this, and using a very watery blue. I'm going to put some blue here. And also here. I'm leaving some white in between the rocks and the water because that's for the spray. That's where the crashing waves are hitting those rocks. And the other thing that one could add is some little birds. Using either the indigo or the purple, you can put a couple of birds like so. Voila, they're flapping together. And maybe I'll put a little bit more darkness here on this. Just a tiny bit. Now, one thing that will help the crashing waves is if you lift a little bit of the bottom of the rocks. To do that, I'm going to use this brush. I'm using this brush, and I'm going to actually lift some of the bottom of the rocks like so. And this will be like if the waves are hitting on the rocks. That's how I do this. Make sure your brush is clean and that your paper towel is also clean. Now this will not lift completely, but that's all right because crashing waves are oftentimes, they're kind of like somewhat transparent. There. If I turn it upside up, now it looks like there's water here, and that's kind of like a spray from the waves. And then when we could do another one here, perhaps. Like so. Kind of makes it interesting because it's very rare that the edge of the water, when it meets the rocks, that it's very sharp. So you can soften the edge a little bit as well. The same way. Okay. Now, once you have done all of these steps, you can step back and decide if there's anything else you'd like to do. You could shape the rocks the same way with lifting a little bit of the darkness, but the important thing is to sign your masterpiece. So I'm going to use a small brush, and using one of the colors that we have used to paint our painting, I'm going to just write my name right here at the bottom. Make sure you allow space for when you frame it. Let's sign right here. Ooh, the water is still wet. Better to sign in a place where it's no longer wet, but it's kind of interesting. So voila, I've signed my name. And that concludes the demonstration for the lighthouse.